Alright, so this month on Creating Meals Mastercourse, I think it's time to talk about something that's going to be pretty apt for the next couple of months, and that is how to coordinate a feast. Now, no matter where in the world you are, this time of year is pretty much rock solid for any kind of either very end of harvest or like winter time, holiday celebration feasts. There are tons of holidays that happen between now and the end of the year, and the end of the year itself is a reason for celebration and feasting. At the time this video goes live on my Patreon, it will be the week of Thanksgiving, and I understand there's a lot of really important discourse around Thanksgiving right now, especially when it regards to what we are actually celebrating. The history of Thanksgiving is one that is very bitter for many people. It's a time that does not represent at all what we've grown up being told that it means, because hindsight is always 2020, and for the many Native American tribes who were kind enough to help the settlers, the colonists, when they arrived, they soon found out that that was going to cause a lot of pain. While we get taught in our schools about pilgrim hats and, all of this turkey and that the Native Americans and the colonists got together so well and everything was happy and great, the reality is just not that. And so when it comes to celebrating the traditions of Thanksgiving, obviously, understandably, a lot of people are still going to want to get together with their families and observe the day. I know that I'm still going to go to my parents and, have a chicken, have the salad, have some pumpkin pie or something, but Thanksgiving for my family isn't what it was regardless, because big family gatherings are gone, but also with that bitter edge of history comes a reason to more reflect rather than actively celebrate, in my opinion. As witches, maybe this means that you go out to the land itself, that you offer something as, a condolence or an apology to the native spirits of the land, be they actual, forest spirits, spirits of the land, or spirits of past people who lived here. And maybe it also means that you kind of take the whole Thanksgiving thing right out of it and just refer to it as a very end of autumn harvest festival, a harvest feast. This is something that I think kind of, anytime between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice can be done. It doesn't necessarily have to be done on Thanksgiving. Obviously, if you work at an office or something, you're likely going to get that day off anyway, so it makes sense to, but we don't really need to adhere to any certain calendar date to have a party. And so when it comes to a feast, in my opinion, don't do anything until you figure out how many people are coming, first of all, because that's going to decide how many of each course you're going to have to prepare and how much of it. So say for if you're doing something like Thanksgiving with a turkey or any kind of bird like that, or even if you're doing like a Christmas roast of some kind, the general wisdom is about 1.5 pounds of like roast bird or 8 ounces of boneless meat per person. So, if you've got about 3 to 4 guests, that's about a 6-pound bird, with bones in and everything. If you've got 5 to 6, that's 9 pounds. And if you've got 7 to 12, just go get the 18-pound bird. Just get the big bird. And that bird, or whatever meat you're getting, or like a pork roast, or some kind of beef roast, or fish, for instance, with Ukrainian Christmas, we often have salmon. This is something that is going to be your main course. That's the star of the whole dish, right? Like that Thanksgiving turkey, that Christmas roast, that is the star of the whole thing. So there needs to be definitely enough of that to go around. Second thing is sides. And sides, it depends on how many people are coming and what they usually like to eat. If you only have like 3 to 4 people total, chances are you can all just agree on something and you can have like, your casual 2 sides, your vegetables and your starch. Maybe it's as simple as like butternut squash and mashed potato, or just some kind of glazed carrots and mac and cheese even. It's up to you. It's whatever you guys like to have as a side dish. But as you get more and more people, you're going to want to have a little bit more variety of sides, or just more of
But
whatever
all of
sides
those
you're
seasonal
making.
associations
So if you've got
aside,
7 to 12
let's
people,
talk about the actual
chances are there's something
basis,
that
some people are
the
going to like
structure
and other people aren't going to
of
like.
a feast.
So maybe you
And
want to
in
switch
that
it up
book, you
with
can see
things
that
like,
there are little things like
there's
Brussels
appetizers, like those
sprouts,
crostinis,
or
there's the actual
things
main
like,
dish, which is the
butternut
roasted
squash,
pumpkin, and
you got
more
sausage
vegetables and things like that, and then
thing,
root vegetables
and then
that
you
are really
have
hearty
your
and
drinks,
good for
and you
winter,
have your sweets,
alongside
right?
different
You've got,
iterations
like
of
that
potato.
cranberry gingerbread.
Maybe
and
there's
all those
sweet
kinds of
potato
things.
and regular mashed potato. Maybe there's roasted potatoes and something more like corn. And then of course comes the dessert. Now for something like Thanksgiving, pretty standard is like apple, pumpkin, and maybe pecan. You can make pies, you can make bars, you can make cookies, you can do all kinds of stuff like that. And when it comes more towards December, here's where we start getting pretty explosive. We start getting things like gingerbread cookies, we get, different types of chocolate. I mean, honestly, cookies alone, if you do those things people do where you just start making like several different kinds of cookies, that's enough to fill a table. I've done that a couple times. But nonetheless, think about what your guests enjoy. Would they prefer something like a pie that can be split up and shared? Maybe you're going to make something like a cake. Maybe you're going to just have different kinds of cookies or brownies or anything like that. This is that sweet finisher that comes at the end of a meal. And as you can see, it does follow that same line of reasoning as we've been talking about throughout creating Meals Mastercourse, which is pick a protein, pick a vegetable, and pick a starch. Now we're starting to also talk about, the desserts and the other accoutrements like breads, salads, soups maybe, the drinks that go with it. Now we're starting to get into the concept of courses, which kind of takes that dining experience to a whole separate level. But with desserts, I mean, if you've got only like 3 or 4 people, maybe 2 desserts is fine, just so there's a couple options. But once you start getting into that 5, 6, that 7, 12 range, I would say anywhere between 3 and 4 desserts, and make sure that there's enough of them. So the concept of courses is actually kind of where we take that one plate of, that Meals Mastercourse, right, that protein vegetable side, and we start adding the befores and the afters. So the after, obviously, is what we're just talking about, that dessert. But the before, maybe for a small group of people, you've got like some breadsticks, or maybe like a big salad that everyone can kind of serve themselves with first. Or if it's something like, again, a Ukrainian Christmas, maybe everyone starts with a bowl of borscht and a little bit of ushka. These are things that just kind of go along the side of the meal or just before it. That's kind of the Slovenian word predjed, right? I mean, before the meal. And that's just kind of something to whet the appetite. It's not the same as an appetizer, but it is something to kind of start you off with and get you ready for the rest of the food. On the other hand, the desserts is, again, as we said, that sweet finisher. A lot of people, especially me, cannot consider a meal complete unless there is something sweet to go after it. It's just how it goes, okay? If there's nothing sweet after the meal is not over, in my opinion. But when you're designing your feast, it's helpful to think of what the whole setting even is. If it's a big dinner party, like a really solid sit-down meal, and you have the ability to kind of serve things around like that, then absolutely I would say, make some soup, like a kind of soup starter to begin with. Typically, the soups that come in that first course, they're not heavy, right? They're not like those really hearty, rustic soups that are full of potatoes and vegetables and meats and everything else. Just like my Ukrainian Christmas example, they're typically pretty sparse. Normally I will make borscht and I will leave everything in it. All of the beets, all of the carrots, all that kind of stuff I'll leave in it. Traditionally though, on Christmas you strain it clear, so it's just the broth. And then you put in some cracked black pepper and those ushka, which are little, mushroom-filled dumplings. The real dinner on Ukrainian Christmas then goes into, the salmon, the pierogi, all different kinds of vegetables, anything like that. And last things is if you have a lot of guests, and I'm talking like that 7 to 12 range, maybe even 5 to 6 range, now is not only the time to consider like that little predjed, that soup or salad, or even just some bread like some rolls, but also some picky things, or appetizers and hors d'oeuvres. Classic picks are things like, pigs in a blanket, deviled eggs, My grandma used to make like those celery sticks with like cream cheese and olives in them. Love that. And anything else like that, right? Maybe even it's just a bowl of nuts, like pecans or something to chew on. Maybe it is a small cheese board, in which, everyone can kind of pick at that while they wait for the food to be done. If you've only got 3 or 4 people, there's really not a lot of reason to, add that much food, because people are just going to end up filling up on those picky things before they get to the real food. But when you have those really, party-sized crowds, everyone's going to be looking for food, and they're going to eat it up pretty quickly. And the last thing you want to think about for a feast is drinks. And now this can be as high maintenance or as low maintenance as you want it. It can be as simple as, getting some eggnog from the store or some local craft cider and just putting it in the fridge and having, for those who like a little bit of alcohol in their drinks, maybe some cognac on the side, maybe some whiskey, to just kind of pour into there. If you want to get more high maintenance, it's a throwback to that, fresh homemade mulled cider. Or it's something like homemade sangria, which can be really, really good depending on what you do. I have a favorite sangria recipe that I will gladly share next month because it's my favorite Christmas drink. But otherwise, it's up to you what you want to do. It could be as simple as just getting a bottle of wine, or, some kind of juice or apple cider or anything like that you want to share with everybody. But in the end, putting a feast together is not nearly so challenging as it seems. There are a lot of different courses, and there are a lot of different sides, right? Unlike a one-pot meal where everything is just wham bam thank you ma'am, all just like in one space, one pot, out of the way, you don't gotta think about it. Feasts mean you have to plan out what goes in what pan, when you start it, when everything's finished, so on and so forth. I know that the first time I tried to cook a Thanksgiving dinner by myself, I was very caught off guard because everything was totally fine and easy in the beginning, and I didn't realize how much coordination goes into bringing every single dish to completion at the same exact time. That's the biggest challenge, because everything has different cook times, and you're going to want to make sure that all of it kind of gets started at a point that it can end all together. Otherwise, you're going to have some stuff sitting out getting cold, other stuff not ready yet, and it's a whole mess. And actually, a resource that I picked up that is really, really cool and has all kinds of different ideas for feastings is this book right here, The Witch's Feast, A Kitchen Grimoire by Melissa Jane Madara. I think this book is so cool because not only does it give you different feast ideas for holidays like the autumn equinox or the winter solstice, it also gives you feast ideas for planetary correspondences, for different, moon phases like full and new moon, so on and so forth, and even for certain spell ideas. It is a really, really cool grimoire, and granted, some of these things get a little bit over the top, kind of high maintenance, but that's kind of the fun of a feast. Specifically for this time of year, I'm looking at her Autumn Equinox Feast, which has crostini with roasted grapes, roast pumpkin stuffed with sausage, fennel and wild rice, curried apple soup, pear and red wine tart tatin, and just so on and so forth. All these different things, they sound phenomenal. And it serves about 4 guests, so if you're having a small dinner party, that's a pretty autumny kind of setup right there. You got your pumpkin, your apple, you have your, grapes, pear, red wine, all those kinds of things that really say autumn. And likewise, in the next go, you have your Feast of the Winter Solstice. This has recipes for things like fire cider pickled eggs, and lentils and roasted roots with walnut sauce, cheesy celeriac mash, and cranberry gingerbread. Yes. And it's also got those many different nuts, right? Like pecans in autumn, we've got walnuts in winter, and I know for my people, the Slovenians, walnut potica is a very important thing for both Christmas and Easter. The reason a lot of these things are what they are during these times of the year is because they have a lot of that fiery energy. Especially things like cinnamon and ginger. These are warming spices. They work to warm up the body and get blood circulating. They're really good, for those cold and clammy times. Those, when you just don't want to do anything and you don't want to leave your bed. Ginger and cinnamon are there to definitely pick you up and plop you back outside. And of course, when you start adding things like evergreens into the mix, like rosemary and, juniper, These are things that represent exactly what that wintry time is all about, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. It's all about that, life in the darkness, persisting on throughout these challenging and very sparse times. As well, you've got those leftover items from the harvest. You've got your apples and your potatoes and your cranberries and your squashes, pumpkins. These are all things that not only signify, wealth and abundance and love and fertility, but also, are relevant to the time of year that it is. They are key components to these kinds of meals because, first of all, that's what was seasonally available at the time, and second of all, because the magic in them is exactly the kind of thing that you want to be fostering when that new year comes in. You want that wealth and that love and that fertility. You want the warming spices and you want all of that fire up in your blood. Certain herbs and spices that are common around this time of year, rosemary, sage, thyme, nutmeg, ginger, cinnamon, allspice, clove. These are all things that banish the dark and bring in the light. They work to protect you, to cleanse you, purify the space, things around you, and they make all those classic flavors that we all know and love around this time of year. It all comes together in a big story of human survival, really, with humans not only holding on physically with the food that they eat, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally with the things that these foods represented to them. I can tell you right now that a lot of the things that are really autumny, wintry, they're going to show up in my, roasted chicken tavern-style meal, which is exactly what I'm going to be making for Thanksgiving with my family, just my parents, my boyfriend, and myself. But with all that said, if you guys are cooking for the holidays, I hope this breakdown and these tips kind of help you just figure out what exactly you want to do and how you want to plan it. Tell me what you guys are doing for the holidays. What are you guys planning? Are you guys having a big feast? Are you guys having small get-togethers? Let me know, and I will see you guys around for more kitchen stuff next week. See? By the way, if you want to see these videos 2 weeks earlier, consider subscribing to my Patreon, where you not only get all these videos, but also recipe cards, specific deity profiles, and lots of other interesting things to look at. Video tiers start at $10 a month, so definitely consider checking it out.